Hey everyone, welcome to the DH Pickleball Show. My name is Mike Behrens, and we are back to sit down with my good buddy David Henry to talk about his pickleball journey, where we do this every single week to help you hopefully improve your pickleball game as well, because David's going to share some tips and tricks that he's using to make his game better, and hopefully you can do that as well. So, David, welcome back to episode 2 of the DH Pickleball Show. How are you today, my friend?
Doing very well. Glad to be here. How about you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to have this conversation. This is a topic. The topic of today's show is pickleball paddle customization, specifically focusing on the grip. This is something I know nothing about, so I'm very excited to learn about customizing your paddle and why you would even need to customize your grip. So let's start there. Let's dive right into talking about customization. What is it about a pickleball paddle that makes it so that you should customize your grip? Why do you even do that? I guess is the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I'll start off being captain obvious, but the thing with the grip is that it's the bridge, it's the connection point. So it's the bridge between your hand and your arm that generates all the movement and power and force, and the paddle face that actually comes in contact with the ball. So with it being that bridge, plays a very, very important role with the grip. And I customize my grip for really a couple of reasons. I mean, as we talked about in episode 1, I'm looking to constantly raise the level of my game and improve the level of my game. And so I'm just looking for every little small incremental thing that I can do, to raise my game in small increments over time. Because, not that I'm, playing at a super high level yet, but I'm at the level where there's probably not like one magic thing that I can do that's just going to vault my game ahead miles. Instead, my improvement from this point on is just going to come from those small little incremental things, and customizing my paddle, and specifically, what we're talking about today, customizing it with regard to grip, is super important to me. And also along the same lines is what I've learned, playing pickleball now for a year and a half, is that every single point is important. And so I don't want, to have a bad grip where, an important point in my paddle slips or turns in my hand, or just something that's going to cost me a point. Because I'll tell you a couple of interesting stories regarding to the whole every point matters situation. Is that, I was playing in a 4-0 plus ladder league last summer. And so in that league, you're assigned to five people per court, and you play 4 matches and sit out 1. So there are 5 matches played per court per night in the league. Let's just say that an average score, we played a 15, win by 2. Let's just say that an average score is 15-10. Okay. So those are 25 points played in one game. And those are just points where we score. So, pickleball, there's different ways to play, but, you're very familiar, I know, with volleyball. Sure. And pickleball, there is some rally scoring now, but for the most part, pickleball is side out scoring. Anyway, 25 points scored in a match game. You play 5 per court that night. So there's 125 points earned on that court in a given night. Well, there was one time last summer in the league, I finished second on my court, and I lost my court by 2 points. That was the differential. that was the differential. Sure. There was another night in league in the fall, same almost exact thing happened. I finished second on my court that night, and the differential was 3 points. So, that's where it really hit me. Points are important. And then, I play a lot of doubles tournaments with my main partner, Andy. We play together most of the time. And we played in one earlier this year, an indoor tournament down in Cincinnati. And we played, it was round robin first. And then the 2 pools, the top 2 finishers of each pool went on to the medal round. So basically 5 teams per pool, and then 2 teams come out of each pool. Well,
Okay.
Andy and I went 4-1 in our pool. We ended up beating in our pool play. We ended up beating the team that was the eventual champions of the tournament. Sure. But going 4-1 on our pool, we did not advance to the medal round because there were 2 other teams that went 4-1 in our pool. So then the next thing you look at is head to head. How to do head to head? Well, we beat one of those teams. They beat the other one, and the other one beat them. So head to head didn't decide it.
Sure.
So guess what it went to?
Points.
Points. And Andy and I had the worst point differential of those 3 teams. So super frustrating to go 4-1 in pool play, beat the people who ended up being champions, but we didn't advance. But anyway, that just goes to show, how points, play such an important role in pickleball. Thus, why I want to, optimize my equipment and customize it as best I can.
Sure. What's wrong with the basic grip of a paddle? Like when you've bought some expensive paddles, like what is the problem with those that would make someone want to customize it?
Yeah, I mean the stock grips that come on paddles tend to just be not that great, and I don't know why. I mean, my guess would be that manufacturers probably know that people are going to put over grips on them, which is what I use and things like that. And so, they probably don't invest too much in grips. I don't know. That's just a guess. And I could be way off base in it, but I just don't tend to like the custom stock grips on paddles. And I like to have a fresh overgrip on my paddle real frequently. And we'll probably talk about, how frequently I change my grips, but, I do that. And so if you're replacing the original replacement grip over and over, it's just easy to do over grips. And so yeah, I mean, I just don't love the factory grips that come on them.
Sure. Have you ever found a paddle that you've tried that you were like, wow, this is a good standard grip that you like as a good stock grip that comes on the paddle? Like what, I guess, let me rephrase that question.
Yeah.
If there was a paddle that had a good stock grip for you, what paddle was it? Did you like? And what was the paddle that you liked if you ever had one?
Yeah, I really haven't. And again, I don't want to give it the impression that they're awful grips. It's just
sure.
I'm used to playing with over grips, so I just strip those off and then I build up. But a lot of times though, and I think we'll talk to it like in the first customization here in a second about how I customize for size of the grip.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of times if I use the factory stock grip and then throw an overgrip on it, it's actually too large of a grip for what I want as well. So that's kind of another reason.
Okay. So how do you start with customizing the grip? Like what's the first step in the process for customizing the grip?
Yeah. So I think the first one is size. Again, as I said a second ago, is to customize it to size. I mean, there's a general rule of thumb that, I don't know if I can get it in the shop, but when you grip a paddle, you should be able to fit one index finger right between the fleshy part of your palm and your fingertips. You should be able to fit one finger in there perfectly. Like not too much. Okay. It's not too tight that you can't get the finger in, or it's not too much of a gap. So that's kind of like a general rule of thumb. But I mean, I just know from years and years of playing tennis that I prefer a grip circumference of 4.25 inches. And that's just what's comfortable for me. It might be slightly on the too small size, but it's just what I'm comfortable with. It's what I've used for years, and it's what I like. And I mean, we've hung out together in person, and you know that on a good day with shoes on, I'm 5'8", so I'm not that big of a guy, and thus my hands are not that big as well. So 4.25 inch grip is probably a little bit on the smaller size, but that's what I like, and that's what I use. So that's the first thing I do. So this paddle that I play with, the Yola Hyperion Ben Johns CFS paddle, the grip. So when I take off the factory grip and strip it down to just the plastic handle.
That was going to be my question. Do you start there? Okay,
Absolutely. So that's what I do. So I strip off the grip, and then there's a lot of times there's glue residue on there. Mm-hmm. So I've got a jar up here in the closet. I've got a Goo Gone, so I spray the Goo Gone on there and let it sit in and get all the glue residue off before I start rebuilding it up. But at that point with this paddle, when I'm down to the bare grip, the handle, it's 4 inches circumference. So
Okay.
what I do is I throw one overgrip on. We'll talk about the type of overgrips I use in a second, but I throw one overgrip on, which adds 1/8 of an inch circumference. And
Okay.
then I put a second overgrip on top of it, and that adds another 1/8 of an inch, and that takes it to 4 1/4 inches, which is perfect for what I want.
Ah, got it. So that's how you measure it. Like it's just because the overgrip is 1/8 of an inch thick, so you know that that's the circumference. Ah,
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also measure it with a tape. I mean, I'm just very anal and meticulous about customizing my paddles. So yeah, I get the tape out and make sure. But yeah, absolutely, I got it dialed in at 4 1/4.
No, that's great. I mean, that's good to know. Like anybody who's never customized a paddle before, like starting with stripping it off and then using an overgrip. So talk to me about the overgrip a little bit. Tell me a little bit about where that comes from, how I get it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, with overgrips, I would say there really are 2 different types. So there's one, it's a popular brand, and it's like a blue cloth like. So I would say that type of grip is more what I call absorbent.
Okay.
So it absorbs sweat pretty well, but it's kind of a cloth like feel. The type that I use and type that I prefer is what I would call more tacky. So this
Okay.
grip, when it's fresh on the paddle like it is right now, like it is tacky. Like you can just feel the
I can
stickiness.
hear
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And what I use it as it's called it's a Yonex Super Grap. I don't know where the term grap comes from. It's GRAP instead of grip, GRIP. But I don't know. But Yonex Super Grap.
Maybe it's just a typo.
No, it's not. I'm sure they've got some sort of rationale for it. But that's the grip I use, and those are tennis over grips.
Okay.
I buy those tennis over grips. The only differences are just longer because a grip on a tennis racket, the handle's longer. So those grips,
Sure.
I'm wasting more when I use the tennis ones than a pickleball one. But anyway, I use those, and I mean I order those from an online tennis retailer.
Okay.
They ship to me. This is like I think a 12 pack here. I normally buy like 30 packs because I do change my grips frequently, But the Yonex one, I mean, it's as good as any. I mean, I don't know this to be true, but it was just a thought that there are probably not that many factories in the world that make overgrips. So I have a feeling that the Babolat grip and the Wilson grip and all these other grips out there probably rolling off the same line in the factory and just slapped another label on it. Who knows? But I prefer the Yonex one. It's just one that I've used for a while and really like it.
Okay. How often you mentioned that you frequently change your grip. So how often are you changing it, and how often should someone change it as they're starting out and getting comfortable with the grip customization?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a real good rule of thumb, for someone. It's probably more personal preference, but that reminds me of a story I'll come back to about how people neglect grips. But what I do, I mean, as I said earlier, I'm real meticulous about it.
Yeah.
I probably change my grip about every 4 hours of play.
Oh, wow. Okay.
4 to 6 hours of play. Because I mean, it does start to lose its tackiness over time.
Sure.
And so I always want to play with the best freshest grip, that I can on my paddle. So probably about maybe 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours of play is when I like to change it.
And that would be the reason you have multiple paddles, probably.
Yeah, multiple paddles as well. So if I am playing a longer tournament day where beyond the 4 hour mark I'm playing, sure, to have an extra fresh paddle I get, or just anything would happen to the paddle, I have an extra one in the bag. But yeah, that's definitely one reason why. And what I was going to come back to on the grip, when you said like changing fingers and what should most people do, it's just funny to me. It's kind of interesting and mind-boggling. Is so for years and years, probably over a decade, I strung tennis rackets. I had a real high-end stringing machine behind me in this home office. And I had clients bring me rackets. I had people send me rackets. They'd mail them to me, and I'd restring them for people. And I was always amazed that people would put so much time and effort into choosing the right frame, the racket frame for themselves. And they would consult with me about what's the best string to use and what's tension of that string, and should I do a hybrid or, all this effort and thought was put into that. Then I would look at the grips on their rackets. And they were old and worn, and they had horrible wrap jobs on them, and it was just always so mind-boggling how people neglect the grip. And unfortunately, I see the same thing happening on the pickleball court. People that I'm playing with or against, I'm always noticing things and look at the grips, and you see some worn ones and some horrible wrap jobs and everything.
Sure.
So anyway,
sure. No, I mean that it makes sense, and for me, like I shared in episode 1, I'm a novice, or not even a novice. I don't know anything about pickleball really,
Sure.
but and I've maybe played tennis a couple times in my life, but it makes sense. When you're holding a paddle, you want to have a good grip on it. And if you're serious about what you're doing and every point counts and you're being competitive, you got to have a good grip on the paddle. I mean, it just makes sense, So I totally get it why you would focus on it. And if you can make your game that much better just because you got a good grip all the time, it makes total sense.
Yeah. And there's also even, I didn't say it earlier, but there's also even a little bit of confidence that comes with it from the standpoint of, I know when I walk out on the court, I know that my equipment and my grip is optimized and customized, and it's just one thing. It gives me a little swagger. Hey, I got this nailed, and then also just one less thing I have to worry about. I know walking on the court, my equipment's dialed in, and I don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense, and there is something to that when you get on the court, just feeling like you're ready to go, and I can imagine the tackiness is like, okay. There's just a feeling to it, so that makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely, and when it's like perfectly clean and white, that's nice too. That's nice
too.
Are
they all white, or does they all how does that? Why do you choose white? Where did that?
No, and that's one of the steps in customizing is the aesthetics. So two reasons for white. Great question. One is you can see on the paddle face. I think some of this is actually like a really, really light gray, but it looks like white, So a white grip goes really nice with the paddle face,
Sure.
Not that aesthetics make a difference at all, but anyway, it looks good.
To that point of the swagger when you walk on the court, aesthetics is important. I mean,
a little bit. It really is. And then the other piece is back to the changing frequency. So for example, I can feel when it's starting to need a new grip, but you can also see it on a white grip. You can really see it on a white grip because obviously your hands are dirty and sweaty, so this white grip does not stay white too long, and it starts to get grungy looking. And so it's just another indicator, in addition to feel, it's another indicator of, okay, probably time to change the grip.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. How long does it take to change the grip? What's the actual process time it takes to take it off and then rewrap it?
Yeah, I mean, not that long, and that's one thing I don't want to talk about is the entire wrapping process because that's a whole nother piece.
Oh, sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah, no. So great segue and question into that. But what I'm doing is I mentioned earlier that to build it up to the size that I want, I put the 2 over grips on it.
Yeah.
So when I'm changing it, I'm just changing the top one. So there's no need to change the one below it because it's not worn at all. It's not dirty at all. It's perfect underneath there. So I change one. Again, I know this sounds like a recurring theme. I'm meticulous with it. So, I'm very careful with the wrap. And we'll get into all those steps about the wrap. But I don't know, 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. So it's not a hard process. It's a relatively simple process to do, and it's going to be a personal preference thing how frequently people change it. But it definitely the benefits are you're going to have just a better feel in your hand all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's cool. Okay, so when it comes to optimizing the grip of your paddle, what is there anything else that we need to cover that we didn't talk about the steps and things to do to optimize the grip?
Yeah. Let me look at my notes here as well. But definitely to talk about the the wrap job itself. So that's what I was
Okay.
saying. Like, some of the people that I saw, the wrap jobs on their tennis rackets or on their pickleball paddles, it's just awful. And so with the wrap, there's actually several things that I do. So the first thing that I do is the orientation of the wrap. So I don't know that it shows here, but the grip's going down at an angle. So it's not.
Yeah, you
It's
can't
not
really
perfect.
see it on the video.
Yeah, it's hard to see here, but the grip's going down at an angle with each wrap around the paddle. It's not just straight across. And
Okay.
so there is a way, and I played years of tennis and didn't realize this. There is a way an orientation to wrap the paddle for a left-hander versus a right-hander. And I'm a left-hander, so I wrap my paddle with a left-handed orientation. And so what that means is that, see, when I grip the paddle, my fingers aren't perfectly across the paddle. My fingers are going slightly down at an angle.
Uh-huh.
And my fingers are going so I've got the wrap going at that same downward angle. So I've got alignment with my fingers and the wrap. Again, does that make a major difference if I played a match with a right-handed wrap? Probably not. But again, I'm looking for those little things. And so that's the first thing in the wrap job that I do, is make sure that I have it wrapped for a left-handed orientation. The second thing I do is, I think it's, let me make sure I'm on the right track, but the tightness of the grip. So you can see here the end of this handle, it is octagonal. So it's got eight different sides of the grip, or what's called, a lot of times they're called bevels. So each side of the grip is called a bevel. So there's 8 bevels on this grip, and I like to feel those bevels.
Okay.
So I wrap it really tight. So I'm really pulling and stretching when I'm wrapping down the paddle, because I want to feel those bevels, and I want a good solid tight wrap on there. So that's the one thing that I do with the wrap. Another thing with the wrap is the overlap. So obviously you're going around the paddle each time, and you're overlapping the previous wrap that you just did. Well, if I have too small of an overlap, then there's a chance that the grip could come apart while I'm playing, because there's just not that much overlap. If I do too much of an overlap, then all of a sudden the grip's getting too big, because I'm putting more circumference around it. So again, you can't see it on here, but you can see a little bit of the wrap lines.
Yeah, a little bit.
Little bit. And what I try to do is I try to get about again, very meticulous, but an eighth of an inch overlap, on there. And it just provides a nice even look as well. You've got these nice even lines on your paddle, but I do that. And then
do you do that on the first layer and the second layer, or is it different for the first layer?
No, exact same.
Okay.
And I try to make that second layer follow that first layer as closely
perfectly. As
possible. Yep. And another thing I do is, when I get to the top of the grip, normally it's just the grip's, I don't know, about an inch wide as you're wrapping it around. I cut it at the very end when I'm done with at the top of the paddle, at the top of the grip. I cut it to a taper. So then I have less material when I'm finishing that last wrap. I don't have this big wide inch of a material flapping in the breeze. I have it much cleaner, because again, I'm very anal and meticulous about it, and I just want this clean finish on the grip. So I taper it at the end, and then the last thing I do is the grip companies. Let's see if I can pull this out real quick. You can see the black Yonex tape right there. That's finishing tape to put around the top of the grip, and I do use that, but then it's pretty thin, and I want something really secure, so I get like a 3/4 of an inch electrical tape, and I do a really clean, tight finish at the top. So
no, that's good.
I know it's probably a lot of it's probably overkill, but that's just how I roll.
Well, you know what? No, I would have to say that hearing you talk about it, I don't believe that it's overkill, because I think it gives more value to you stepping on the court, feeling and knowing that your paddle feels good in your hand. And for anybody who's never customized their grip before, try it sometime and see the difference that it makes in how you feel when you're on the court. You know, you might change your world, and it might give you more like what David's saying is it gives him a little more confidence when he steps on the court, knowing his paddles are dialed in. So yeah, it makes total sense, dude. Total sense.
Good. I'm glad I'm not crazy.
No, I mean a little. No. I'm just kidding, dude.
The acronyms OCD have definitely been used to describe me, so you know I'm good with it.
Whatever, it's all good, man. It's all good. All right. Yeah. So before we wrap up this episode, is there anything else you want to share?
Yeah. One other thing that I don't know that many people do this at all, but it's one little extra tip or trick that I do when customizing my grip is, so when you put this fresh grip on there and then you grip it, okay? The minute you grip it, your fingers are starting to wear very subtle grooves in the grip, okay? You know, it's forming. Your fingers are kind of forming to the grip's forming to your fingers a little bit. So because of that, I want to make sure that I grab the paddle the exact same way every time so that my fingers are fitting perfectly into any grooves that have formed. So in order to do that, to know that I'm always grabbing the paddle the right way, what I do is, you can see here, I draw with a Sharpie, I draw a little black square on this side of the paddle only. I don't have it on this side. I only have it on this side. So I know when I grip the paddle, I want to see that black square looking up at me. So, you know, if I'm out there in the court and I've been twisting my paddles or holding my paddle in my other hand, you know, between points or whatever, and it's time to get ready to receive serve and ready to start a point, you know, I can quickly look down and I can flip my paddle and make sure that I see that black square looking up at me. I call it grip finger alignment, you know, so I'm aligning my grip and my finger, and, you know, it's just one little extra thing that I do to customize and optimize and, you know, make sure my grip's perfectly dialed in.
Dude, that's awesome. I like that little tip there, because I think, I mean, and that's another piece of that confidence too. So that's really, really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And I could be wrong. I don't know that, you know, many people do that at all. You know, it's probably, you know, one of my crazy tendencies, but yeah, something ridiculous. I do. And absolutely. I think I've said that word several times throughout this episode, but yeah, that is the way I handle things.
Okay. So before we wrap up then, then where, for somebody that is listening to this, that wants to get started, but they don't, like, they listen to all of this and they're feeling like, okay, where do I start? What's the first thing that I need to do to customize my paddle, to focus on that grip? What's the first thing somebody should do to really adjust their grip?
I mean, size is probably the most important thing. Is make sure you're playing with the right size of grip. And again, that rule of thumb is pretty good to, you know, fit your one finger in there. That's probably the best spot. And then I would say the other thing is probably just to, you know, make sure that you're not using, you know, the same grip for months upon months, and, you know, it's getting super worn and super slick, you know, things like that is probably the best. But you know, and you know how I am, Mike, as far as, like, you know, super open to helping anybody. So, you know, if any of the viewers ever have questions, you know, they can certainly connect with me, you know, online. I'm happy to, you know, I love talking about this stuff, and I live it and I breathe it. And so, you know, happy to help anyone, you know, answer any questions to help optimize their grips as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And where can they do that if they want to get a hold of you? Where's the best place to stay up to date with the journey of David Henry and reach out with questions?
Yeah. Well, this show obviously, you know, is on YouTube. So, you know, you can put comments below the video on YouTube, and I'll respond to the comments, or, you know, direct message me or whatever. And then dhpickleball.com. That is my site, my blog, where I post all these videos as well. There's a simple contact form there, so you can fill out that and ask questions, and that'll come right to my phone, and I will answer that as quickly as possible. And then Instagram is where, from a social media standpoint, is where I post most of my pickleball information, and my handle there is DH Pickleball.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, okay. So David, this has been a great episode about pickleball paddle customization focused on the grip. Leave some comments, ask some questions. We'd love to hear from you guys. Give us some feedback on what you think so far of episode 2 of the DH Pickleball Show. We have more exciting information coming about how David customizes and optimizes and is meticulous about his pickleball game, just to throw that word in there one more time. So for myself, for David Henry, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the DH Pickleball Show, and we will see you in the next one.